Hello and welcome to episode 112 of On My Studio Table. As you know, I offer tutorials via my online shop called gonerustic.com, and the tutorial that has really been popular lately is one that I'm offering for free, which is understandable of course, but hopefully the content is also something that you enjoy. I certainly enjoyed putting it together and I've had some lovely feedback as well. So I'll share the last stitched piece of art, which is the theme of the free tutorial, Stitching Your Art, today, because I hadn't done it yet by the end of the tutorial, but I had done an example very similar to that. People who have accessed this live all over the world, and that's the wonderful thing about being online, that I'm able to communicate and relate to and teach no matter where you are, and I can share things with you and I hear from you sometimes, and it's just so lovely being part of this community. This is something that I didn't really understand fully when I started this series, and it's just unfolded and been a wonderful thing to be a part of. The art shed is progressing well. We had an inspection the other day and we passed with flying colours, so thank you to Ian and Ken for the wonderful work you've done in preparing the holes ready for the footings. And the man who does the cement truck will be coming next week to have a look, and hopefully we'll be able to pour the cement very soon. Just so exciting. Ian's starting to order materials. The windows have been ordered, and you can see that it's actually going to happen after all the delays we've had. Anyway, I could ramble on forever, but then we'd be here for a very long time. So let's get on with things and get creative. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know that I've joined a 93-day project with K3N, that's Catherine Chambers of K3N Cloth Tales. I did some projects with her before. In 2024, I did another type of stitch journal, which was a weekly stitching exercise. Then last year we had Coverlet of Comfort, and I made the quilt that's hanging behind me at the moment because I just love to look at it, so I haven't put it away. Now we're doing a stitch journal with a daily exercise, so that takes a little bit of commitment. Also, Catherine isn't doing daily videos. She's putting a daily post on her Facebook page and Instagram page, just showing what she's stitched and a little quote next to it. No other explanation. And I just find that really liberating, actually. So I'm just going to briefly talk about what I've done so far. This is the title page. I only did this the day before yesterday because I had to think about what to do, and I didn't want to totally obscure this piece of eco-printed cardie paper. And I made what ended up being like a giant tag, really, and putting some stitching on it after I'd collaged it with various bits and pieces. I put a key on it, which was given to me by one of my lovely subscribers, a sample of the threads that I've used on this, and Stitch Journal 2026 R Summers, and in brackets with K3N. And I might make a little pocket elsewhere in the book, maybe even in the cover, and do a more detailed explanation of the project and why I'm involved with it. I also wanted to do them not in any particular order. So this is actually the latest one. It's not the first one. I had been putting the dates on them, and I decided I didn't want to put the dates because then I would feel like I had to keep them in chronological order. So I'm just putting the theme. The theme of this one is time, and on the back I'm going to write down some details about it. I just haven't done that yet. And I've used some of my eco-printed paper, including layers of paper from corrugated cardboard with the text and so on still on it, some vintage wallpaper, a patterned wallpaper, some indigo dyed linen, and a piece of wool from a wool sample. And I've attached this as if it's like a little book or an insert of some sort, and I've stitched it down, but I've also glued it to make it strong. And then I put another strip behind it because this paper is quite thin. The reason I did it this way is I didn't want to obscure this rust printing and tea dyeing on this page. This is an old envelope, well, a recycled or used envelope, not particularly old, and it's quite thin, like a glassine type of paper, so that's why I've reinforced it. This was actually the first one, and this is a woven stitchery, and I've backed it onto a piece of very fine cloth. I don't know that it's pure cotton. I think it might be some curtaining sent to me by another lovely follower. and I used a mixture of my eco-dyed fabrics, Japanese cotton, and even a piece of baby wipe which has some paint on it from my jelly printing process. And then I decided I wanted it to be like a vintage sample book, so I made a tag for it with the threads that I've used, a little bit of collage, the theme which is weaving, and also what I've used for this actual sample. The reason, again, that I've only attached it at the top is that I want to be able to see some of the rust printing and so on. This is one that's called Feather. I think this was day 4, and I wanted to do like a little book. So I actually layered 2 pieces of paper. This one is quite torn, which I really like. Joined it with the pamphlet stitch to the background, but I glued a piece of extra paper on the back to strengthen it, because again, this is the thin envelope paper. And then I collaged it with some fabric, wool, lace and silk. Did a bit of stitching, which shows on this side, which I don't mind because it tells the story. And I attached a little feather that a friend sent to me in an envelope a few years ago. I have a bit of a collection of feathers. This is a piece of silk, and very, very fine. I think it might be like a chiffon or something like that, or maybe even an organza, although it feels soft like chiffon to me. And then again, some eco-dyed or printed papers. This is going to be quite thick by the time it's finished, I think, but I really like that, so that's not going to be an issue. So that's waiting for whatever's going to be put there. This is one which has a landscape theme, and I use some found objects as well as the naturally dyed fabrics, the insides of 2 clothes pegs, and a little bit of chain that I found on the road a while ago. This is a transfer print based on a drawing that I did in a sketchbook a few years ago, and I transfer printed that through my inkjet, and I did talk about how to do that in one of the videos. Again, a tag with landscape on it, which was the theme, and a description on the back. This one, I didn't add too much in the way of materials to this, because this is such a lovely piece of rusted and naturally dyed fabric. It's crinkly, a type of cotton, and it had some tiny rusty washer prints on it. So I thought, well, they could be the pebbles, and some marks here from the dyeing, which look like a shoreline or a tide mark. So I just stitched along those very simply. And then I just added some fly stitch to represent seabirds and some French knots to represent little pebbles or small shells or something like that. So that's it so far, and I'm just loving it. So enjoying this. It's right up my street, as they say. And I can use my collection of naturally dyed papers, which I did earlier this year, and different types of cloth. Go through my thread collection, which I've set aside actually for this project. Use my little tiny scraps and just go for it. And I just love it. So thank you so much, Catherine, for starting this project. I am so enjoying it. In my last video, I shared that I had 10,000 subscribers for Instagram, which was a total surprise. And to celebrate, I made a tutorial for free for anyone to access. The tutorial is about stitching your art. So you can stitch the art that you've made, especially on paper, but also on cloth, even on cardboard, as long as it's not too thick. And I demonstrate one of these bird jelly prints as an example of what you can do to enhance your art with stitching. So I had these done already before I made the tutorial, and I have shared a little bit about them over the last 2 or 3 videos. But for the purposes of the tutorial, I demonstrated using this bird, which is the theme of the jelly prints. And then since then, I've also done this one. So I didn't demonstrate that one in the tutorial, but I used the same techniques as I did for this one. Because they're similar with their colour scheme, it made it easier for me to film it and to make it more visible. Whereas in these, the stitching is not quite so obvious. A lot of people have accessed it. I'm so grateful that people have found that it's something that they'd like to try. I know that many of you already do stitch on paper and mix paper and cloth together and so on. But for some, this is a new thing. So I've approached it from the angle that maybe you have never stitched in paper before, stitched in your artwork before, and it is something that you've hesitated to do. And I just hope that the tutorial gives you the confidence to do that. I also give you a few tips and techniques about how to start and stop, how to respond to your artwork so that you work with the artwork rather than against it or over the top of it. Collage also really lends itself to stitch as an extra element. I did mention last time that one person who enrolls for this free course will receive a free art print download of one of these bird jelly prints. I took the images before I did the stitching so that they're open and free for you to practice your stitching on if you wish. So I'm going to extend that for another week, and the deadline will be Thursday. So Thursday next week, and I will choose somebody to receive the free download. So you can print it onto paper or cloth and then practice some stitching on it. I've put the link for the tutorial below the video. But all you need to do really is just to go to gonerustic.com, click on the events thumbnail, and you will find the free tutorial there. You don't have to pay anything. You may have to register your details just so that Shopify knows that you're a bona fide person. And you will receive an email with the download information. And you can access this anytime you like. So it's an evergreen course for free for its entirety. I mentioned last week that I'd had some negative feedback about the Words 2026 project, particularly my latest square as of the last video, which was based on the word pleat. And the feedback that I got from you was just so encouraging. Thank you very, very much. It really helped me. I did manage to shake it off, but as I said in my last video, it did cause me to have a bit of a jolt when I read it, and I just tried to be kind but firm in my response. I've had no feedback as yet, but I didn't expect to, and that's okay. I've said my bit, and we can put it behind us now. But thank you very much for your comments of support. This is the next square. The theme for this one is curl, and I thought I'd be quite abstract about it and just place some things on it in a kind of a curly, curving way. The first piece I did was this piece of cotton, which is hand dyed, not naturally dyed, which I got in a bundle from the Thread Studio in Western Australia. The second piece is this piece of sari silk, which I used to tie up my bundles when I was eco dyeing, so that took some dye as well. And then I did a piece of yarn. Before I did any of that though, I had a collaged background, because I like to collage my backgrounds in advance before I know what the word's going to be. And that way it's not a blank page or a blank piece of cloth that I'm trying to get inspired by. On the background, I had some naturally dyed linen, some cotton, and I think this is more cotton here, and a piece of lace, which I think originally might have been from a tablecloth. That's been rust dyed, and I did that years and years ago. So, you know, these pieces, they just become useful at some point, don't they? I basted it first onto a piece of old sheet, I think, and then I laid the curls and things on it, invisibly basted it again, except for the yarn, and then added the stitches. So I've used French knots on the fabric curls and just a straight stitch over the wool yarn. And then I added a few other stitches, like some running stitch around some of the loops. And I really didn't think it needed any more. So the fabrics already give a lot of texture, and the stitching just adds to that, but you don't want it to overwhelm it. You might be wondering why I've got China showing up on your screen. Well, that's because last week when I pulled out the word for Words 2026, I mentioned that I do like China and that I had a few pieces with the cottage theme, because as you know, the cottage pot holds the word for each week for the Words 2026 project. So I just thought I'd give you a little look at them. This is a lovely bowl. It's by Myot, M-Y-O-T-T. I do like the monotone qualities of the design on this. It's got a few highlights, such as red for the jacket and the skirt there, yellow for the roof and for the ground, and some green for the grass and the shrubs, and up here too for the trees. But otherwise, it's quite monochromatic, and I really like that. And I have these sitting on our piano at the moment in the hallway because I just like looking at them. They'll get put away soon because I've got an exhibition coming which will be on display. This one is a different brand. It's by Cottage, a lovely scene of a village with a bridge. The handle actually comes off if you want to wash them separately after you've used them, which is really good. A church spire in the distance, some trees, of course. I'm not sure if there are any other smaller details such as people or animals. It looks like there are some ducks on the river. So it's just a beautiful scene. And again, not terribly colourful, but just those lovely muted colours, and you know that I love them. Very soft green on the outside. This is another Myot piece, and this one has touches of blue. So the other one, the bowl, didn't have any blue in it, but this one does, and I really like that. And here there's a sort of a creek flowing under a handmade bridge, and a cottage, of course, and in the distance trees and a fence. And the decoration around the edge is beautiful too, with different kinds of leaves and even grapes and so on. So very beautiful. I don't actually seek these out most of the time. Occasionally I will get something, say, on Facebook Marketplace, but most of the time these are happy accidents. So I'll find them either in secondhand shops or junk shops or even the opportunity shop in various places. And I've collected these over the years, and I don't go over the top because, you know, how much China can you actually have? And I already have quite a bit. But it's just lovely to have a few pieces that you really like and enjoy. So my little cottage pot is going to join the other cottage theme pieces just for a few minutes. And I'm going to draw out the word for week 32 of Words 2026. The pile is getting smaller because we're more than halfway through the year, of course. I'll just pull one out and have a look. Oh, this is a beautiful one. It might be difficult to express in stitch, I hope not, but it will take a little bit of thought, I think. This is hope. Hope is something that is active, I believe. It's not a passive thing, and it's something that you need to nurture every day pretty much, especially when things are not going well. And I know some of us are really struggling because of the political scene where we live, perhaps even in an area where there's war. I must admit I'm pretty secure where I am, but I'm not untouched by difficulties. Everyone has things that come up in their families, losing someone that is dear to them, such as we have just recently. All sorts of things can make us almost lose hope, but we really need to hang on to that. And as I said, I think it's an active thing. So this might be something that would be good to do a mind map with. You might even just want to do the letters and just embellish them in some way. It doesn't have to be representational of anything. It can just be. So I'm looking forward to what you come up with. And as always, I'm totally blown away by the ideas and design elements and so on that everybody uses. It's just so personal and so beautiful. Thank you.